The growing Occupy Wall Street movement is now in its 23rd day of nonstop protest. Occupy events have been popping up all over the country, including this one today in front of the White House. About 100 people gathered to protest what they call corporate greed and social inequality. One person was arrested when he tried to throw a shoe over the White House fence. Secret Service says the shoe hit a uniformed officer. The man has been charged with assault. CNN's Susan Candiotti is at ground zero of the Occupy Wall Street, a park in Lower Manhattan, and she joins us now. Susan, the crowd looks like it's bigger than it was last Sunday. What's going on there today?
Well, at this hour, Don, they have one of their people assemblies going on. You can see it. You could possibly hear it over my shoulder, where people make speeches, but because they don't use a mic system here, they don't have permits for that. So instead, they shout it from person to person to person, so the entire crowd can hear what the message is, trying to rally support for their cause. Now, as you said, as we pan the crowd here, you can see that there are a lot of young activists here, certainly, but there are also others here from different walks of life. Last hour, we introduced you to a grandmother who came here with her son all the way from Detroit to about a week. All kinds of people represented. They're also getting visits from celebrities, some who are here to show support, some who stop by not necessarily looking for the spotlight, but just to hear what's going on. In the middle of this week, on the biggest day we saw of all the crowds they've had, that was the day when they had the big rally, we ran into documentary filmmaker Michael Moore, who's been here quite a bit, and actor Tim Robbins. Certainly both of them are activists. I ran into one and then the other. I got into the middle of them. They started to talk to each other and to me, and I specifically asked them whether they thought at some point that this movement, maybe next year, would go so far as to back a specific presidential candidate. Here's what they said.
Don't you see that this is beyond the politicians? People are not here to endorse candidates. They have waited for years for the politicians to respond to the pain that they're feeling, and there was no response. So now this has gone beyond them. It's gone beyond thinking about who's running for office next year.
It's gone beyond the idea that a politician can save the day here or solve the problem. Right. It's not. It's the problem is deeper and bigger than that.
So certainly they're all about affecting change. That's what this movement is all about, and they're talking about different ways to get there. They don't want to be affiliated, again, Don, with any specific political party, but it is interesting to note that when I talk to people about that, I'm getting a lot of people who say they support Ron Paul, many libertarians here, and I'm also seeing more than one sign saying tax the rich. And of course, as you know, a lot of polls now show the majority of Americans supporting that notion, but not getting anywhere so far, of course, in Congress and at the for now. Back to you, Don.
All right, Susan Candiotti, thank you so much for that. You know, the Occupy Wall Street movement apparently doesn't have many friends among Republicans. House Majority Leader Eric Cantor called them mobs, and Republican presidential candidates have been lining up to dismiss the protesters as un-American and engaging in class warfare. Listen to Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann.
I went by one of the protests in Washington, D.C. on Friday, and I saw a lot of signs from AFSCME and other unions that were there. So I don't know how spontaneous these protests were, but it seems to me that their anger should be directed at the White House, because Barack Obama's policies have put us in one of the worst tailspins economically that we have. And maybe that's why the protest that I saw was within shouting distance of the White House.
Yes. But the fact of the matter is, why aren't there jobs? Go and picket the White House. Demonstrate in front of the White House. The thing that this administration does not get is that the business sector is the engine of economic growth. That's key. They don't get that. So this president and administration wants to continue to try and spend our way to prosperity. Part of it is jealousy. I stand by that.
And as you might imagine, civil rights veterans such as Reverend Joseph Lowery have a much different perspective.
The people know that he is not responsible for our financial dilemma, and they know that the financial community is responsible, that the greed, the corruption, the selfishness of the financial community, and even today when the wealth are not willing to share their wealth, they want to keep less than 10% of the people own more than 90% of the wealth. That's unfair.
Well, many people are comparing Occupy Wall Street with the Tea Party. And I put the question to Princeton professor Dr. Cornel West. You'll see him sitting next to TV and radio commentator Tavis Smiley. I'll explain why, but first, listen to Dr. West.
The Tea Party movement is a right-wing populist movement obsessed with individual liberty, obsessed with small government, lower taxes, whereas what you see with the young people, especially in the Occupy Wall Street movements around the country, is a different kind of movement. It's not just populist in the progressive sense, but it's inclusive, it's embracive, it's concerned about not just individual liberty, but social justice. Not just social justice, but trying to get some control over the greed and Wall Street, the greed, the corporate greed you see in the military-industrial complex. You see it in the prison-industrial complex. It's an all-embracing movement. It reminds me much more of the 1930s in responding to recession and depression and trying to create a unified movement, trying to get some control over the elites at the top, the 1%, who have accrued 83% in 5 years.
The always outspoken Dr. Cornel West, and I spoke with him and Tavis Smiley about their recent poverty tour across America to highlight the plight of the middle class who have now joined the ranks of the poor. My interview with them coming up in about 30 minutes here on CNN. Let's go to the Capitol now, Capitol Hill, where this week the Senate is expected to vote on President Obama's jobs bill. 60 votes will be needed to overcome Republican efforts to block the measure, which has a $447 billion price tag. CNN's Athena Jones has a look at the highlights.
The bill would cut payroll taxes, extend unemployment benefits, give tax credits for raising wages or hiring out-of-work veterans or the long-term unemployed, and provide money to keep public workers on the job and invest in rebuilding schools and roads. It would be paid for with a 5.6% tax on income over $1 million, starting in 2013.
It is that proposed tax on high-income Americans that has united so many Republicans in opposition to the jobs bill. They argue that taxing anyone, even people who make a lot of money, is the wrong thing to do in a sluggish economy.
Well, what's concerning about it is he put ideas in this jobs bill that have already proven to fail. Instead of trying to get compromise, he's embracing conflict. He's running around the country campaigning on a bill that he knows won't pass. He can't even get out of the Senate right now, rather than working with us on ideas that we agree on that would actually help create jobs.
All right, so this isn't a shocker for you. Democrats say the bill is essential and that polls show the American people do support higher taxes on the wealthy. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi says the bill still has a chance to pass in the Senate.
Well, I think the Senate Democrats overwhelmingly are promoting it. There are one or two, a few that may have some concerns about one aspect of it or another. But what's important is the president is taking it to the people. They understand the opportunity it presents, the distinctions between doing something or not, and what it means in their lives.
Unemployment remains stuck at 9.1%. Another reason Democrats argue that a jobs bill is badly needed.